I always suspected my family loved my paychecks more than they loved me, but suspicion and proof are two very different beasts. Proof arrived on a bright Tuesday in Dubai, 8 months into a brutal assignment in risk strategy, when my screen filled with my mother's overlit smile. "Amara, sweetheart, we have the most wonderful news." Her voice had that syrupy lift she reserved for requests and confessions disguised as blessings. Dad's face slid into the frame behind her, wearing his company picnic grin, the one he used to soften bad news as if it were a surprise party. "We solved Sada's wedding budget," he announced, chest puffed. Every muscle in my body went very, very still. "What kind of solution?" "We sold your loft," Mum chirped, like she'd said we'd sold an old sofa. "The downtown one. We got a phenomenal price. More than enough for Azure Crest Estate, the orchestra, imported lilies, everything Sada dreamed of." My pulse thrummed in my ears. "My loft is in my name." Dad sighed, employing that paternal patience that always meant, "Let the sensible people handle this." "Technically yes. But we've been managing it while you're abroad and you weren't using it." "I'm not using it because I'm working overseas, so you can keep living like nothing costs anything." Sada shoved into view, glowing like a chandelier. "Amara, isn't it perfect? 300 guests, a glass marquee, fireworks on the creek. I can cry." She fluttered her fingers, already rehearsing. "You can get another place. At least this way your money becomes a memory." A memory. That loft was the first thing I bought that didn't have our family's fingerprints on it. It was proof I could build a life outside the gravity of their need. "How did you sell property without me?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. "We shepherded the paperwork. Family helps family. You forged my signature." Mum flinched. "Such an ugly word. We're not criminals, we're a unit." "Units don't commit fraud," I said. But I smiled anyway, the smile I learned in boardrooms when danger arrived dressed as charm. "Congratulations, Sada. I'm sure it will be unforgettable." I ended the call. The reflection in my blackened screen stared back, eyes cold, shoulders set. They thought I would swallow this like I always do, like a good quiet daughter made of iron and apologies. They had no idea what they'd just woken up. I scrolled to a contact I hadn't dialed in months. "Kemi," she answered on the second ring, alert as a blade. "Tell me who to sue." "Pie family," I said, and the room stopped spinning. "And it's going to be ugly." I paced the hotel carpet, listing details like evidence exhibits. My parents had keys, files, a familiarity with my life from years of helping. Sada's fiancé, Kane, wanted a spectacle at Azure Crest Estate, and my parents had provided the spectacle's fuel. "How much did they steal?" Kemi asked. "Loft was worth around 420. Market's hot. Maybe more." Kemi whistled. "Hey. First. Original deed, mortgage, any conveyance records. Do you have them?" "Everything. Not on their cloud. On mine." "And access they still have?" "Not to the important thing." I stopped by the window. Night pressed against the glass like a secret. "Remember Arcadia Trust, the holding company I set up 3 years ago? The one you used for your rentals. 6 months after I bought the loft, I transferred title to Arcadia. Legally, they didn't rob me, they robbed a corporation." Kemi's laugh was low and delighted. "You cunning saint. The sale's dead on arrival." "Completely voidable," I said, and then the part one barely admitted to myself. "Arcadia's been covering my parents' mortgage for 4 years. Anonymous relative, they call it. I've also been paying off their credit cards, the car, half of Sada's tuition. Through shells." Silence then. "Amara. I lived on instant noodles in a studio near a highway in Dubai so they could have silk curtains." Kemi didn't soothe. He never did. "What do you want?" "An injunction to freeze and unwind the sale. Then stop all Arcadia payments, effective immediately. That will send their house into default within 60 days. They made their choice when they sold mine." My phone pinged, a new email. "From Delilah," I said. "Apparently Kane and Sada's planner. She's experiencing payment irregularities and needs a responsible family member." Kemi's voice sharpened. "The checks are bouncing. Looks like." I smiled without warmth. Lesson 1. You can't spend money that isn't yours. Chaos wears many masks. In my family, it prefers a group chat. At 6 a.m. Dubai time, I unmuted the thread I'd buried months ago. Sod, only the florist is being so dramatic. If they cancel the peonies I will scream. Mum, don't worry darling. Your father's handling it. Dad, it's a minor banking delay. I screenshotted and sent it to Kemi with 2 words. It's starting. Minutes later, Kemi's face filled my laptop. Hair in a bun, mug in hand, eyes bright. Filed, she said. If Justice Moreo signs this afternoon, the bank will lock every cent from the sale pending investigation. Perfect timing, I said. Sada's final fitting is tomorrow. Kemi arched a brow. You're enjoying this. Enjoyment is the wrong word, I said, opening another email from Delilah. 17 vendors requesting payment, venue threatening release of date, caterer requiring cash. Delilah's tone was moving from honey to brass. Then a message from Jet at Azure Crest Estate. Per contract, full payment within 48 hours or the date is forfeited. Embarrassment is Sada's currency, Kemi said. Inflation is coming. Calls flooded my phone. Dad, then Mum, then Sad. I let them all go to voicemail and played them on speaker. Dad, forced casual. Amara darling, just little bank hiccups. Call me. Mum, breathless. There's been some terrible mistake. The bank used the word illegal, but that can't apply to us. Sad, unhinged. If you're behind this, I will never forgive you. Fix it. I forwarded the audios to Kemi and opened the file I'd labeled care package. Pages of transfers. Arcadia Trust to their mortgage servicer, to the card companies, to the car lender. A ledger of a ghost daughter underwriting a family's fantasy. I attached everything to a new email addressed to Mum, Dad and Sad. Subject: for your review. Body: since banking is complicated right now, please review your financial history. Pay attention to entries from Arcadia Trust, the entity that has been covering your mortgage for 4 years and that actually owns the loft you attempted to sell. Consider this my resignation as your anonymous benefactor. Best of luck with the wedding. Amara. I hit send and waited, a strange calm descending. Some storms you don't outrun. Some you call down yourself. They received the email minutes before the court's order hit their accounts. Kemi called at 3:47 p.m. their time. It's done, she said. Funds from the sale are frozen. Investigation opened. The group chat detonated. Dad, what is happening to our money? Mum, the bank says there is a legal hold. That means, what? Sad, someone fix this. Jet is threatening to release our date. Dad's name flashed on my phone again. I let it roll to voicemail and pressed play. Panic had sandpapered his voice. This isn't funny anymore. Game, Kemi muttered. He thinks it's a game. Mum's voicemail followed, softer and worse. We saw your email. You did that for us. For years. Amara, we didn't know. Then Sad, puppet master. You've been controlling all of us and now you're vindictive because I'm getting married. Another email. Delilah. Urgent cancellations pending. She'd begun notifying vendors of non-payment and hinted at legal exposure. I opened Sada's public page despite myself. The day's post featured her swathed in pearls, captioned, "Final fitting before forever." #blessed bride. Comments were turning sharp. Didn't your planner just say it's cancelled? Fraud? Girl, what? Imagine stealing from your sister. Kemi peered over her glasses at my screen through the call. Public shame is doing the work you were never allowed to do in private. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered on speaker. Amara? This is Kane. Or I suppose was. He'd always sounded like polished oak. Now he sounded splintered. I've seen documents. Your parents forged signatures. That's criminal. Correct. And you've been supporting them? Quietly. For years. Also correct. He inhaled hard. I can't marry into this. The deceit. The entitlement. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, I said. Apologize to the version of yourself that almost signed up for it. When the call ended, Kemi gave a low whistle. The dominoes aren't falling, they're sprinting. I locked my phone. For once, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like air in my lungs I hadn't owned in years. By midnight, my room glowed with the ugly light of too many notifications. At 2 a.m., the hotel landline dragged me out of sleep. Put me on speaker, Dad demanded when I answered. Fabric rustled. Mum sniffled. Sada's breathing was a jagged metronome. Come home, Mum pleaded. We can fix this as a family. There's nothing to fix, I said, calm finally settling in my bones. There's accountability to accept. That word again, Dad snapped. We're family. Families don't use words like fraud. Families don't sell each other's homes, I replied. Sod burst. You have so much. You're always traveling, always working. You didn't even live there. I paid your mortgage for 4 years, Sod. $2,800 a month. Half your tuition. The cards. Silence sucked the oxygen out of the line. That was you. Mum whispered. Arcadia Trust, I said. Pie Company. Why didn't you tell us? Dad asked, bewildered by generosity without performance. Because when people believe they are entitled to your help, disclosure is permission. Dad's voice softened to the tone that used to talk me out of tears. We made a mistake. Tell Kemi to unfreeze the funds. Help us make this right. No. Sod scoffed through a sob. You're cruel. No, I said, feeling the truth ring through me like a tuning fork. I'm clear. I asked them when they last called to ask about my life and not my purse. Silence. The most honest answer they had given me in years. You raised one daughter to carry the world, I said, and another to believe it would be carried for her. Dad tried one last gambit. What do you want? Nothing, I said, relieved by the weightlessness of it. I'm done wanting from you. I unplugged the phone. The room darkened to something like peace. Some bridges collapse under their own rot. Others you set alight, because on the far side is the first air you've breathed that wasn't rationed. 3 days without my phone felt like a fast. Dizzying at first, then clean. When I turned it back on, missed calls stacked like a skyline. The story had escaped our family's walls and metastasized across the city. Across platforms. Kemi called. Turn on Channel 7. A lower third screamed. Family fraud scandal rocks luxury wedding circuit. Delilah spoke on camera, eyeliner smudged, saying words like non-payment and guarantees and reputation harm. Sada's midnight rant had been stitched and duetted 1,000 times. One popular clip froze her mid-scream under the caption, Entitlement, Exhibit A. Comments flickered. She stole from her sister. She called the police on the victim. This is why boundaries exist. I was still absorbing it when Kemi said very carefully, Your father was arrested yesterday. The room tilted. For what? Disorderly conduct at the bank. He tried to force the teller to release frozen funds. Security intervened. I sat down. I had wanted consequences. I had not imagined handcuffs. An email slid into my inbox. Subject line. Information you need TOC. It was from a name I recognized. Amara, a loan officer. We video called. She looked like she'd sat in fluorescent light for a week. I shouldn't, but you deserve context, she said. Your parents have been applying for loans in your name for months. We flagged and denied them. They kept shop hopping. They've been insolvent since 2019. Without Arcadia, they would have lost the house years ago. What about Sod? I asked, bracing. Amara hesitated. Your mother's credit shows $60,000 in designer charges tied to Sada's card. Spa packages. Venue coordination fees. Every lie they told me about stability curdled. Why tell me? I asked. Because they filed a complaint saying you were financially abusing them, withholding resources that belong to the family. If you're walking into a storm, you should know the weather. After the call, Kemi unmuted, eyes fierce. They're rewriting the script. We'll answer with evidence. My phone lit with an unknown number. Kane. Sada's trying to convince my parents you're unstable, he said. She asked them to fund the wedding and help her get you evaluated. I laughed once without humor. Of course she did. You're not the villain, Kane said. I'm sorry I learned it this way. So am I told him, and meant it for more than the wedding. Reporters found my number. I let the calls pile like snow and opened a blank post instead. If they were going to build a bonfire with my name, they'd have to do it in full daylight. I compiled a timeline. Acquisition, transfer to Arcadia, payments, forged instruments, sale, injunction. I redacted account numbers, not artery lines. I uploaded bank confirmations, not gossip. Then I wrote the part one had most avoided writing. The years of saying yes while my body screamed no, the tiny deaths of swallowing it for the sake of peace, the way peace never arrived. I hit publish and felt lighter. Not happy, honest. Minutes later, a call cut through the noise. Amara? Detective Navarro, Financial Crimes. His voice was gravel and caution. Your parents have filed a restraining order claiming harassment and financial abuse. Based on your post, we need to discuss very different charges. Which ones? Fraud. Identity theft. Filing false reports. If you're willing to cooperate. I stared at the cursor blinking in the aftermath of my post, the tiny metronome keeping time with a life about to split open again. I'm willing, I said. Kemi texted a single word from across the city. Forward. In the hours that followed, my post galloped through spaces that had once felt like foreign countries. Neighborhood Facebook groups, diaspora forums, legal subreddits. Women messaged me with quiet confessions. Forged signatures, stolen savings, borrowed inheritances. It was strange, how telling the truth displaced loneliness. People could hate me. People could worship me. None of that changed what happened. Evidence didn't need applause. Detective Navarro emailed a list of documents and a time. Kemi replied before I could. We'll be there. Sleep didn't come that night so much as arrive in pieces. I dreamed of my loft, its big windows and quieter dignity, and woke to the first sunrise that didn't feel like an exam. Courtrooms are factories that turn chaos into language. When I walked into Department 12 with Kemi at my side, the gallery hummed with the soft electricity of spectators pretending discretion. Dad looked older, as if the week had vacuumed out years of bluff. Mum clutched a tissue like a talisman. Sada sat behind them, eyeliner sharp as a blade, hatred hotter than the lights. Preliminary hearing, the clerk intoned. People of the state versus Tio and Boma Kalu. Justice Alvarez presided, mid-50s, steady gaze, the kind of judge who read every page and then read them again. The prosecutor laid it out without adjectives. The transfer to Arcadia, the forged conveyance, the attempted sale, the years of anonymous support, the repeated attempts at identity-based loans, the retaliatory police complaint. When Dad spoke, his voice had the wobble of a man who believed sincerity should be admissible. We're a family, he said. Amara has always taken care of us. We thought the loft was a family asset. Did you sign your daughter's name on legal documents? Justice Alvarez asked. He wavered. Yes. Did you attempt to sell property you did not own? Yes, but. There is no but, she said, not unkindly. There is only law. Mum stood tears hot. She manipulated us, controlling the money for years. Mrs. Kalu, the judge said gently, that's called generosity. She had no obligation to tell you where her gifts came from. Sada couldn't bear the gravity. She ruined my wedding, she shouted. She's vindictive. Bailiff, the judge said softly, please remove the witness. They escorted Sada out, still spitting sparks. When it was over, the judge spoke with the clean edge of consequence. Remand recommended on fraud counts, identity theft allegations to be bound over, false report charges to proceed. Conditions set. Restitution ordered. It was not triumph. It was a translation, pain into precedent. Outside, microphones bobbed like bait. I said one sentence into them, love without respect is not love. Then I let Kemi steer me away from the swarm, the door closing on the click of cameras and a part of my life that would never be private again. We went back to the loft that evening, my first time in months. Carlos, the doorman, pressed a hand over his heart when he saw me. Still yours, he said. Always was. The elevator groaned familiarly to the 15th floor. Inside, dust motes swam in late light, unbothered by scandal. My books waited without judgment. My photos blinked from the walls, frozen versions of a girl I had been while earning the money that paid for everyone else's breath. It feels smaller, I told Kemi, setting my bag down. Like it belonged to someone who wanted to be invisible. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Kane. She's saying you bribed the judge, forged your own evidence. She started a fundraiser to fight injustice. It has $12. I laughed, then covered my face because laughing hurt. She'll never change, I said. Change isn't your assignment, Kemi replied. Freedom is. I walked to the window, the skyline knifing the evening into something beautiful. Somewhere out there, My parents were meeting their consequences in rooms with fluorescent lights and plastic chairs. Somewhere, Sada was composing a story where she was still the heroine. I want to sell, I said, surprising myself with how steady it sounded. The loft. Yes. New city. New air. Where? I don't know yet. Maybe I go back to Dubai. Maybe I vanish to Lisbon. Maybe I finally choose a place for myself. Kemi nodded. I'll set it in motion. As the sun fell, I scrolled through my contacts and deleted numbers like old spells. My parents, Sada, the aunt who called to say I'd shamed the family, the cousin who wanted just a small loan. With each deletion my phone felt lighter, as if digital weight had mass. Some bridges are meant to burn, I said, not to be cruel but to be true. Kemi leaned her shoulder against mine. Some bridges are prisons, she said. Walk away and call it a jailbreak. The morning after the hearing, Detective Navarro called with news that felt bigger than my own case. 3 other adult children came forward after seeing your post, he said. Parents forging deeds, stealing savings, insisting it's family loyalty. I sat very still. What happens to them? We investigate. We charge where we can. We refer to services where we can't. Your evidence made them brave. Brave. I'd never aimed for that, I had aimed for air. But bravery is sometimes a side effect of honesty. When the call ended, I walked the rooms of the loft one last time. I touched the spine of a book I loved, the ceramic bowl I'd bargained for in a market in Marrakesh, the dent in the kitchen counter where I'd once dropped a cast iron pan and cried because it felt like failure. My past self had built this place to prove I could take care of everyone. My present self was selling it to prove I didn't have to. Downstairs, Kemi waited by the curb. Paperwork's in motion. A clean sale. Arcadia to buyer. No ghosts. I smiled. There will always be ghosts. But at least I'm not haunting myself anymore. We drove toward a future that still looked like fog. The radio murmured about markets and weather and a scandal that had already started to fade. My phone vibrated once more, an unsaved number I recognized by the rhythm of its persistence. I let it ring out, not as punishment but as release. I didn't need to hear new ways to say sorry that meant give us back what we lost when we lost you. I rolled down the window. The city smelled like rain on hot stone. For the first time in years, the question, "What do you want?" wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation. I don't know where I'm going, I admitted to Kemi, to myself, to the road. But I know who I'm taking. Who? Me, I said, and the word didn't feel selfish. It felt sacred. The light turned green. We moved. The days following the hearing blurred into a strange silence, the kind that feels earned rather than imposed. Yet silence in my family never lasted long. The first crack came in the form of a letter, handwritten, smudged with haste, shoved under my apartment door like contraband. It was from my mother. "Mar, please. We can't survive this without you. Your father is breaking. Sada won't leave her room. You were always the strong one. Don't abandon us now." I read it 3 times, the script jerky, desperate. But each line carried the same message. Save us. Not one word of apology for selling my loft, for forging my name, for turning me into the villain. No acknowledgement of the courtroom, of their crimes, of the years of siphoning my earnings. Just another plea disguised as love. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a drawer and locked it. There was a time I would have answered immediately, flown home, written checks, soothed their wounds. But that Amar was gone. Instead, I walked to the balcony and looked at the skyline. Freedom tasted like altitude. My phone buzzed. Another message, this time from an unknown number. The text read, "They're telling people you planned this for years. That you set them up. That the loft was always bait so you could humiliate them publicly." The lie stung not because it fooled me but because it revealed the depth of their desperation. My family would rather paint me as a conspirator than admit their own hands were dirty. I turned off the phone. Some storms no longer deserved my attention. But deep inside I knew this was far from over. Desperate people rarely go quietly. News of my parents' crimes spread faster than even I expected. Tabloid headlines twisted my face into caricatures. Ice Queen heiress exposes her own family. Daughter turns parents in after wedding fraud. Some called me cruel, others called me courageous. Both missed the truth. I wasn't either. I was simply finished. But the internet, as always, wanted a villain. Sada was eager to play the victim. Her social media accounts turned into theaters of lamentation. She filmed herself crying, mascara smeared, moaning about a sister who hated me so much she destroyed the happiest day of my life. The comments section flared with both sympathy and scorn. One night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through her livestream. Sada swore I had always been jealous, always cold, always scheming. She called me a control freak who used money as a leash. Her viewers fed her anger, tossing heart emojis like confetti. Then one comment cut through. If your sister was paying your bills for years, maybe say thank you before calling her a monster. The silence that followed was brutal. Sada's face tightened, her jaw quivering. She ended the stream abruptly. Kemi texted me a screenshot moments later. They're eating her alive in real time. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, all I felt was hollow. Watching her unravel online was like watching someone drown in a pool they refused to admit was shallow enough to stand up in. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the city lights. My sister's world had collapsed, but instead of building something new, she chose to broadcast her ruins and call it theft. For the first time, I understood. Sada didn't just need money. She needed someone to blame for the emptiness she carried. And I had stopped volunteering. The first time I saw my father after the hearing was through a television screen. A local reporter had captured him outside the courthouse, head bowed, flanked by 2 officers. His hands were cuffed loosely, but his face bore the weight of something heavier, humiliation. This is a misunderstanding, he insisted into microphones. Families make mistakes. This isn't crime, it's confusion. Confusion. That word rolled around in my head until it soured. Confusion didn't forge signatures. Confusion didn't sell property it didn't own. Confusion didn't siphon a daughter's income for 4 years. Kemi called immediately after the broadcast. Do you see what he's doing? He's softening the narrative. He wants pity. And pity, I said, has always been their most valuable currency. But pity wouldn't sway the law. Within 48 hours, the district attorney confirmed formal charges: fraud, identity theft, filing false police reports. Minimum sentences. Probation unlikely. Still, the weight of it pressed on me. I had dreamed of justice, not jail cells. When I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, lined, bewildered, as if betrayal had landed on him rather than flowed from him. That night, I dreamed of being small again, 8 years old, watching him fix a broken toy for me with steady hands. He'd smiled and said, "I'll always take care of you." Dreams don't erase reality. I woke with the words heavy in my chest. He lied. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my palms, wondering if blood guilt could seep into skin through generations. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You may think you've won, but family is forever. They will never forgive you. Neither will I." It was unsigned, but I didn't need a name. Reporters began circling my loft, their cameras like vultures waiting for carrion. Carlos, the doorman, called up one evening. "They're camped outside, Miss Amara. Want me to block them?" "No," I said. "Let them record an empty lobby. That's all they'll ever get." But one reporter slipped through the cracks. She cornered me as I stepped out, thrusting a microphone forward. "Amara, do you regret sending your parents to prison?" The question stopped me in my tracks. Do I regret it? I thought about my mother's smile when she told me they'd sold my loft. My father's jovial voice wrapping theft in ribbons. My sister's dismissal. "You can always buy another." I met the reporter's gaze. I didn't send them to prison. They did. The clip went viral. For once, the internet sided with me. Finally, someone said it, read one comment. "Accountability isn't cruelty," wrote another. But with public sympathy came public scrutiny. Strangers dissected my life. My salary, my job, my lifestyle. Some accused me of being heartless, others of being a martyr. It was like being torn apart by people who would never know the quiet ache of sacrificing yourself for family until there was nothing left. That night, Kemi stayed over. We sat on the floor, pizza box between us, the city humming outside. "You know they'll keep coming," she said. "Reporters, relatives, random strangers with opinions." "I know. You ready for that?" I chewed slowly, then nodded. "For once I am." Because the truth was, I had lived my whole life for other people's approval. Now I was learning to live with their anger instead. And strangely, anger was lighter. A week later, I received a call that sent a chill through my bones. "Miss Amara?" The voice was formal, clipped. This is Officer Bello with Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report about your niece. My niece. I repeated. Yes. The report claims financial instability in her household and alleges potential neglect. We need to confirm some details. I froze. My sister didn't have children. Not yet. Which meant someone had weaponized lies again. You've been misinformed, I said. Sada has no children. The officer hesitated. Interesting. Because her parents, your parents, insisted otherwise. They provided photos. My blood ran cold. Photos? Yes. Old pictures of you holding a toddler dated years ago. They claimed the child was Sada's daughter left in your care. I almost dropped the phone. The child was me at 2 years old on my mother's hip, my father's smile in the background. They had taken my childhood photographs and repurposed them as proof. Officer Bello's tone softened. Miss Amar, I believe you. But you should know your parents are escalating. If they're willing to falsify this, they may try worse. After the call, I sat shaking. This wasn't desperation anymore. It was delusion. My family wasn't just trying to reclaim money. They were trying to rewrite reality itself. Kemi found me hours later, still clutching the phone. They used your baby photos, I whispered. Her eyes hardened. Then it's time to stop playing defense. We go public again with proof. If they want to fabricate, we'll drown them in facts. I nodded slowly. Facts had been my weapon all along. But now I realized truth wasn't just about survival. It was about protection. That night, I opened the folder of photographs I had digitized years ago. Every birthday, every holiday, every candid moment of my childhood was preserved in pixels. My parents had weaponized them, but in my hands they became something else. Evidence. I selected the originals of the photos they had submitted, metadata intact, dates and times unaltered, and uploaded them alongside the report from Officer Bello. Then I wrote a caption. When desperation turns to invention, even your childhood becomes a weapon. For clarity, I have no niece. Only parents who cannot stop lying. The post spread like wildfire. Sympathy poured in, but so did anger. Strangers were furious, not at me but at my parents' audacity. How low can they go? One comment read. Another said, this isn't family. This is warfare. Sada, of course, doubled down. She released a video insisting the child existed, that I had erased her daughter for revenge. But the internet wasn't buying it. Side-by-side comparisons showed the truth. The toddler in the photo was undeniably me. Your sister is drowning herself, Kemi said, scrolling through the mess. Every lie she tells is another anchor. And yet, watching it all unfold, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt weary. It was like watching a house you once lived in collapse beam by beam. You don't celebrate. You just mourn that it was ever your shelter. That night as I lay awake, I realized something. I couldn't keep reacting to their lies. I had to build something of my own. A life not defined by court cases and scandals but by choice. For the first time I wondered, not just what I was leaving behind, but what I was walking toward. I began searching for apartments abroad. Lisbon. Vancouver. Cities that had always been dreamscapes rather than destinations. Each listing felt like a door I could step through, away from the shadows of my family's collapse. But escape was never simple. One morning, a letter arrived from the prison where my father was being held. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. Mar, it began. I know you think I betrayed you. Maybe I did. But I raised you. I taught you to ride a bike, to multiply, to face bullies. Doesn't that count for something? Please don't abandon us completely. We are still your parents. I read it once, then again, searching for what wasn't there. No apology. No acknowledgement of the harm. Just a plea disguised as memory. Kemi read over my shoulder. Do you want to respond? No. Why not? Because he doesn't want forgiveness. He wants absolution. I folded the letter and placed it with my mother's in the drawer. 2 pleas side by side. 2 reminders of why silence was sometimes the only answer. Later that evening I sat with Kemi on the balcony. Do you ever wonder, I asked her, if cutting ties makes you as cruel as the people you cut? She shook her head. Cruelty is taking without consent. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. Her words sank deep, deeper than the city's neon glow. I realized then that survival wasn't enough. I didn't just want to outlive their betrayal. I wanted to live. And that meant leaving, not just the loft, not just the city, but the weight of their hands on my life. The day I listed the loft for sale, I felt like I was betraying myself. It had been my sanctuary, my proof of independence, my symbol of escape. Yet it had also become a battlefield. Every corner whispered of loss, not victory. The realtor arrived, cheerful, oblivious. "This place will go fast," she said, clicking photos. "Great light, perfect location. You'll get above market guaranteed." I nodded, numb. It was strange how something so personal could be reduced to square footage and resale value. But maybe that was fitting. To my family, it had never been a home, just an asset to be exploited. As the realtor left, I walked through each room saying silent goodbyes. To the kitchen where I'd once danced alone with a glass of wine. To the window seat where I'd watched storms roll in. To the bedroom where I'd dreamed of a life untouched by obligation. "Ready?" Kemi asked gently. I swallowed hard. "Ready." We locked the door behind us, the sound echoing like the end of a chapter. Later that night, I received a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret selling it. That loft was the only good thing you ever did. Without it, you're nothing." I stared at the words, fury rising. My family had taken so much, and now they wanted to define even my worth. I deleted the message without replying. Because the truth was, I wasn't nothing. I was free. The sale finalized within weeks. The funds hit my account clean and untethered. For the first time in years, my money was mine. No secret transfers. No anonymous bailouts. No invisible chains. I sat with Kemi in a cafe, staring at the confirmation on my phone. "So," she said, stirring her coffee, "where will you go?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Every place feels possible. And terrifying." "That's freedom," she said. "It's supposed to scare you." But fear wasn't the only thing in my chest. There was also excitement, like standing at the edge of a cliff, wind whipping, knowing the jump could kill you but also knowing it might be the first real flight of your life. Across the cafe, a news report played on the television. The anchor spoke of rising cases of financial abuse within families, of adult children funding parents and siblings until their own lives collapsed. My case was cited as a catalyst. "You've started something," Kemi said. "I didn't mean to. Meaning doesn't matter. Impact does." I thought about the strangers who had messaged me, thanking me for giving them courage to confront their own families. My pain had become their blueprint. For the first time, the story wasn't just mine. It was bigger. And maybe, just maybe, that made the suffering mean something. On my last night in the city, I stood on the balcony of the loft one final time. The skyline glittered, indifferent to my battles. Below, the streets pulsed with life. Taxi horns, laughter, the hum of a city that never cared who I was. Kemi joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "To endings," she said, raising hers. "To beginnings," I corrected. We clinked glasses, the sound soft but final. I thought about my parents now facing months behind bars. About Sada still spinning lies online, clinging to a spotlight that burned her. About the relatives who had sent messages calling me selfish, ungrateful, cruel. I thought about myself. The girl who once believed love meant sacrifice, who once gave until she had nothing left, who once mistook obligation for loyalty. And then I thought about tomorrow. The flight booked, the bags packed, the horizon waiting. "I don't know what comes next," I said softly. "You don't need to," Kemi replied. "You just need to choose it." I nodded, letting the city's noise fade. Tomorrow I would leave. Tomorrow I would build. Tomorrow I would finally live a life that was mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The plane lifted off the runway with a rumble that shook me to my core. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the city shrink into a blur of lights and shadows. Behind me lay the ruins of a family I once thought unbreakable. Ahead of me stretched something terrifying: choice. As the clouds swallowed the skyline, memories flooded me. My father teaching me how to balance on a bike. My mother's lullabies when storms rattled the roof. Sod curled against me as children, clutching my hand when she had nightmares. Were those memories lies? Or did love exist, only to be warped into greed and entitlement over the years? I sipped water from the tiny plastic cup, the questions swirling heavier than turbulence. A flight attendant smiled kindly as she passed, oblivious to the battlefield in my head. For years I had built my identity around sacrifice. I was the strong one, the responsible one, the dependable one. Without them tethered to me, who was I? I pulled out my journal, the one Kemi had insisted I carry. On the first page I wrote, "This story isn't about them anymore. It's about me." The words steadied me. For the first time I realized my family's betrayal didn't just destroy something. It freed something. The city vanished behind the clouds, and with it the weight of years spent being everyone else's safety net. I didn't know what waited for me, but I knew one thing. I would never again mistake exploitation for love. I landed in Lisbon to skies the color of slate and streets glistening from rain. The air smelled of salt and possibility. My new apartment was small. One bedroom with peeling paint and a view of tiled rooftops. But it was mine, paid for with my money, not disguised through shell companies or siphoned for others. The first night I cooked a simple meal, pasta, garlic, olive oil, and ate it by the window. The silence was profound, but not the suffocating kind I'd known in Dubai. This was silence that hummed with peace, not debt. Still ghosts lingered. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I refused to open. Relatives demanding explanations. Old acquaintances fishing for gossip. Even strangers projecting their pain onto mine. "You're brave. You're heartless. You're selfish. You're inspiring." One email stood out. It was from Amara, the loan officer who had helped expose my parents' fraud. "Amara, I thought you'd want to know. The DA has filed additional charges. Your testimony triggered a wider probe. Several families are stepping forward. You've started something much bigger than yourself." I closed the laptop and leaned back. Bigger than myself. That was the part one hadn't expected. My story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It had become a mirror for countless others. The thought was overwhelming but also clarifying. Maybe my suffering wasn't wasted if it helped someone else escape their chains. I looked out at the city, rain streaking the glass. Somewhere out there people were telling their stories too, painful, messy, unpolished. And maybe, just maybe, none of us had to drown in silence anymore. Weeks passed. I built a routine. Morning walks along cobbled streets. Afternoons writing in cafes where no one knew my name. Evenings on the balcony, sipping tea as the city glowed golden in the fading light. For the first time my life was mine. And yet, guilt crept in like an uninvited guest. Could I really be happy knowing my parents sat in prison? Knowing Sada still clung to lies like lifelines? One evening, I received a letter forwarded by my attorney. It was from Sada. Her handwriting was sharp, furious, but beneath the anger I sensed something else. Fear. "Amar, I hope you're satisfied. You destroyed me. Cain left. The vendors hate me. Strangers laugh at me. But one day you'll regret this. Because family is forever whether you want it or not." I stared at the page for a long time. For years those words, "family is forever," had kept me chained. They had excused abuse, justified exploitation, silenced my protests. Now I realized something. Family may be forever, but so is betrayal. So are scars. And I had every right to choose which forever I carried. I tore the letter in half, then in half again until it was confetti in my trash bin. For once I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. The next morning I walked to the ocean. The waves crashed endlessly against the rocks, reminding me that life goes on no matter what burns behind you. And I decided, right there on the shoreline, that my story wouldn't end with revenge. It would end with reclamation. One afternoon my phone buzzed with a message from Kemi. "They want you to speak at a financial abuse conference in Geneva. Survivor panel. Expenses covered." I froze, staring at the screen. Speak? To strangers? About all of it? Part of me recoiled. I had built walls around my wounds, and tearing them down in public felt like exposure all over again. But another part of me, the part that remembered Amara's words, the strangers' messages, the other victims who had stepped forward, knew this was bigger than my fear. I called Kemi. "I don't know if I can." "You don't have to," she said. "But think about the people who don't have your voice. You've already changed the conversation without trying. Imagine what you could do if you did." That night I rehearsed in front of the mirror. My voice trembled at first but steadied as I spoke the truth aloud. How family had treated me like a wallet, how betrayal disguised itself as love, how boundaries weren't cruelty but survival. When the day came I stood on stage in Geneva, lights hot on my face, an audience waiting. My hands shook but my voice didn't. "I am here today," I began, "because I learned the hardest lesson of all. Love without respect is not love. And family without accountability is not family. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was reverent. And for the first time I felt not like a victim but like a survivor. The conference changed everything. Invitations poured in. Interviews, panels, articles. People wanted my story, but more than that, they wanted the truth it carried. I became a reluctant advocate, but with each telling the reluctance faded. One evening back in Lisbon I sat on my balcony watching the sun sink into the sea. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from a number I hadn't deleted. My mother. Mar, we saw you on the news. You spoke so beautifully. We are proud of you. Please don't forget us. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Proud. The word rang hollow. Pride without remorse was just another performance. I typed nothing back. Instead I opened my journal and wrote, "Some bridges are meant to burn not out of hate but out of love for the person you become on the other side." I closed the book and leaned back, breathing in the salt air. My parents might never change. My sister might never forgive. The world might never fully understand. But none of that mattered. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't defined by what I gave but by what I chose. And I chose me. The city lights flickered to life below and I smiled. Not the forced smile of the responsible daughter, but the quiet smile of someone finally free. The past was ashes. The future was unwritten. And for the first time I was ready to write it.